Did you know that in Jason Goes to Hell, there's a theory that a demon or dark entity inhabits Jason Voorhees' body? This would explain not only his superhuman strength, but also his supposed ability to transfer his consciousness to other people. In this video, we'll dissect the anatomy and mythology behind Crystal Lake's most feared killer and discover if there truly is an infernal power guiding each machete strike. Stay until the end to understand how this demonic force could make Jason indestructible. The tragic origin. Jason's story begins with tragedy. Born with hydrocephalus, a real medical condition causing cerebrospinal fluid buildup in the brain, Jason came into the world at a disadvantage. In the 1950s to 60s, when his childhood takes place, treatment for this condition was limited, resulting in abnormal cranial pressure, compromised brain development, visible facial deformities, reduced cognitive ability. This condition was crucial for his development, both physically and psychologically. His mother, Pamela Voorhees, overprotective, kept him isolated from the world, an understandable decision considering the cruel bullying he suffered due to his appearance. Social isolation prevented Jason from developing normal social skills, but, interestingly, some areas of his brain may have developed in unusual ways to compensate for other deficiencies. It's possible that this same awakening of certain brain regions contributed to his resilience, creating a foundation for what would become one of cinema's most feared villains. Jason's hydrocephalus wasn't just a plot device, but a medical basis to explain his monstrous appearance, creating a villain who is, ironically, also a victim. Some fans even speculate that the pain and frustration accumulated since childhood served as a gateway for darker supernatural influences. The first Jason, the human body. Before his transformation into a supernatural being, Jason possessed a human body, albeit atypical. The characteristics described in the early films, especially in Friday the 13th Part 2, allow us to analyze the human Jason. Approximate height of 6'1", which would increase in later films, above average strength, but within human limits, asymmetrical body structure due to hydrocephalus, limited mobility, but surprisingly agile over short distances, apparently normal metabolism, requiring food and rest. The most interesting aspect of this phase is that, despite his cognitive limitations, Jason demonstrated remarkable spatial intelligence and tactical ability. His skill for tracking, ambushing, and creating effective traps suggests compensatory development in brain areas related to hunting and survival, perhaps a result of years living alone in the forest after his supposed death. This period of total isolation may have sharpened his instincts and prepared his body and mind to withstand extreme conditions even before any supernatural touch. The transformation from human to supernatural entity. The crucial turning point in Jason's anatomy occurs after his resurrection in the fourth film. Although details vary between sequences, the franchise establishes that Jason undergoes a fundamental transformation. By carefully analyzing subsequent films, we can map the physiological changes: significantly increased bone and muscle density, altered nervous system with drastically reduced pain perception, drastically reduced metabolism, possibly entering a state of suspended animation when inactive, accelerated cellular regeneration, particularly in damaged tissues, visual deterioration of external tissues, mainly facial. This transformation isn't scientifically explained in the films, but suggests a unique necrobiotic process, neither fully alive nor completely dead. This is where theories about demonic influence gain strength. If Jason really carries an entity in his body, this supernatural parasite could be responsible for reactivating his tissues, keeping him in a state of suspension between life and death. This would explain his ability to survive extreme conditions that would be fatal to normal humans and even other horror villains. The paradoxical respiratory system. One of the most intriguing aspects of Jason's physiology is his respiratory system. In Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood, we see Jason survive submerged in the lake for years, while in Jason 10th, he clearly survives in the vacuum of space. This suggests ability to enter a state of deep metabolic hibernation, possible alternative anaerobic respiration, tissues that don't require constant oxygenation, cells with natural cryogenic properties that resist freezing. Interestingly, despite not needing to breathe constantly, Jason maintains the ability to emit sounds, mainly grunts, suggesting his vocal cords and lungs still function somehow, even if not for conventional breathing. If we believe the demonic theory, we could imagine that the demon possessing him feeds his body in an unnatural way, allowing Jason to ignore the basic laws of human physiology. The reinforced skeletal structure from Friday the 13th Part 6. Jason lives onward, we see Jason withstand impacts that would break normal human bones. His skeletal structure appears to have transformed into something denser and more resistant, similar to bones with 5 to 7 times greater mineral density than normal, reinforced joints with extraordinarily resistant cartilage, expanded rib cage that protects vital organs, especially densified skull, explaining his resistance to head blows. This unique bone structure would allow Jason to survive tremendous impacts and explains his ability to exert superhuman strength without damaging his own skeleton. Fans of the demonic theory point out that this reinforcement could be a direct consequence of a ritual possibly conducted by Pamela Voorhees that would have tempered Jason's body to make it a perfect weapon against anyone who ventures into Crystal Lake. The supernatural muscular system. Jason's enormous strength is one of his most notable characteristics. He regularly tears off limbs, pierces walls, and lifts heavy objects with ease. Analyzing his demonstrations of strength, we can theorize muscle fibers with 10 to 15 times greater density than normal humans, absence of muscle fatigue due to altered metabolic pathways, muscles that don't exclusively depend on ATP for energy, muscle contractions that aren't limited by protective mechanisms of the nervous system. This unique muscular structure would explain how Jason manages to maintain consistent strength for prolonged periods and perform feats such as going through walls or crushing skulls with his bare hand. If we add the hypothesis of demonic influence, we could assume that this supernatural strength comes from a kind of channeling of power, making Jason capable of overcoming any normal physiological limit. The anomalous nervous system. Jason's nervous system presents fascinating anomalies that explain both his resistance to pain and his characteristic movements. Reduction or absence of peripheral pain receptors. Simplified neural circuits that prioritize motor functions. Hyper-efficient neuromuscular connections that explain his reflexes. Hyper-developed primitive brain areas. Brainstem, cerebellum. This unique neural configuration explains Jason's famous slow walk. He doesn't need to run because his movements are extraordinarily efficient, allowing him to cover surprisingly large distances with little apparent effort. Again, the idea of an infernal entity within his body could justify the shutdown of pain pathways, keeping Jason always impassive in the face of injuries that would kill anyone else. Accelerated cellular regeneration. Jason's incredible regenerative ability is evident in several films, where he recovers from serious injuries that would be lethal to any human. Tissue regeneration, 50 to 100 times faster than normal human. Ability to reconnect limbs if quickly replaced. Prioritization of vital organs in regeneration. Regenerative process that continues even when Jason appears dead. This regenerative process, however, has limitations. The scars and deformities on his body indicate that regeneration isn't perfect and possibly prioritizes functionality over aesthetics. It's as if Jason's body, or the entity inhabiting it, only cared about keeping him operational, caring little for his appearance. The iconic mask. More than a symbol, Jason's hockey mask isn't just an aesthetic element, it represents a complex layer of his psychology. Before the hockey mask, Jason used a burlap sack, demonstrating his constant need to hide his deformed face. Psychologically, the mask serves as a protective shield against the judgment he suffered in childhood. Elimination of facial expressions that would humanize the character, visual symbol of his transition from victim to aggressor, element that creates disconnection between his actions and identity. Interestingly, Jason shows strong attachment to the mask, recovering it when lost or seeking substitutes. This behavior suggests that, even in his supernatural state, Jason maintains human psychological traits related to self-image and shame. If there is indeed a demonic entity in his body, it seems to respect or somehow coexist with this human trauma, feeding on it to keep Jason trapped in a cycle of violence. Immortality explained. Mythological theories. Jason's apparent immortality is perhaps his most supernatural aspect. Throughout the films, various theories are presented. Demonic influence theory. In Jason Goes to Hell, it's suggested that a demon or supernatural entity inhabits Jason's body, explaining his ability to transfer his consciousness. Necronomicon theory. Connections to the Evil Dead universe suggest that the Book of the Dead may have been used by Pamela Voorhees to revive her son. Contaminated water theory. Crystal Lake may contain supernatural or chemical properties that caused Jason's mutation. Revenge cycle theory. Jason's own rage and desire for revenge may have created a supernatural cycle that keeps him alive until his vengeance is complete. Each of these theories complements the idea that Jason isn't just a killer, but an almost elemental force of vengeance and horror, transcending normal biological limits. If you believe the demonic version, then Jason would be a kind of infernal knight, destined to punish anyone who enters his territory or who simply awakens his fury. The hidden vulnerabilities. Despite his apparent invulnerability, Jason demonstrates some consistent weaknesses throughout the franchise. Traumatic reaction to water in some films, reminiscent of his drowning. Vulnerability to memories of his mother. Susceptibility to traps that evoke his original death. Possible weakness to specific ritualistic weapons. These vulnerabilities humanize Jason, reminding us that, despite his supernatural nature, he still carries psychological traumas from his human life. In Jason Goes to Hell, we see that there are ways to banish the demon possessing him, suggesting that even the most relentless of killers has a breach when confronted with equivalent or superior powers. The physical evolution. Throughout the franchise, Jason's appearance evolved drastically throughout the films, not only due to different actors, but also as an intentional part of the narrative. Part 2. Human Jason, height 6'1", with facial deformities. Part 3 to 4. More muscular Jason, height 6'3", with visible wounds. Part 6. Zombie Jason, height 6'4", with evident decomposition. Part 7 to 8. Severely decomposed Jason with visible bone structure. Jason 10. Cybernetic Jason, with technological implants. This physical evolution illustrates Jason's adaptable nature, suggesting that his body form responds to environment and circumstances. The culmination of this evolution is Uber Jason in Jason X, where futuristic technology fuses with his necrotic tissues, creating a techno-organic hybrid. For those who believe in the demonic theory, this fusion would be just another layer of armor for the entity that refuses to give up on the world of the living. The psychology behind the monster. Although rarely explored in the films, Jason's psychology offers fascinating insights into his nature. Obsessive fixation on Crystal Lake and his territory, ritualistic behavioral patterns in killings, ability to recognize maternal symbols, tactical intelligence to elaborate complex traps. These elements suggest that, even in his supernatural state, Jason maintains a mind with motivations, memories, and preferences. He's not just a senseless monster, but an entity with purpose and method in his actions. If the demon or evil entity really exists within him, this creature has learned to use Jason's pains and obsessions to make him even more lethal. Conclusion. Jason's anatomical legacy. Jason Voorhees represents much more than a simple masked killer. His unique physiology combines elements of speculative science, supernatural horror, and human tragedy. From his initial medical condition to his transformation into an almost immortal entity, every aspect of his anatomy was carefully developed to create an unforgettable antagonist. The true horror of Jason isn't just in his appearance or strength, but in the disturbing mixture of humanity and monstrosity. He began as a victim, transformed into an aggressor, and finally transcended into something beyond human understanding. This physical and mythological evolution is what keeps Jason relevant decades after his first appearance. The next time you watch a Friday the 13th movie, look beyond the mask and killings. Notice the meticulous anatomical construction of one of the most enduring icons of cinematic horror. Is Jason driven by his own hatred and suffering, or are we really seeing a demon manipulating each stroke of his machete? And you, which aspect of Jason Voorhees' supernatural anatomy do you find most fascinating? Leave your comment below. Subscribe to the channel for more in-depth analyses of your favorite horror characters, and don't forget to hit the bell to be notified of new videos.